So from an external perspective, it looks like we hardly did anything in this chapter. We've just got these 3 static pages with just this tiny amount of dynamic content. Oh, by the way, it's worth noting that, look at that, there's home there in the URL. We can also go to static pages about, and there it is, the variable title is working. Of course, it's nice to actually confirm in a browser that it's working. The tests tell us that it should be working, but it's always good to do a sanity check. So we've got this very small amount of dynamic content, but these are basically static HTML pages. But we've done this development in such a way that we now have a foundation for adding an arbitrary amount of dynamic content. So there will be a huge amount of dynamic content in the lessons ahead. Now that we've finished this feature, let's commit our changes. We finished this topic branch. Can add everything, and then commit the changes. At this point, I'd like to check out the master branch and merge in the changes from this static pages topic branch. But I'm having some laggy behavior on Cloud9, and I want to show you how to deal with this if things are kind of slow. It's actually sped up a little bit now, but if you inspect the processes using the ps command, psaux, and then this is called a pipe. We're piping it to grep, which matches Spring. So there's a box, if this looks mysterious, there's a box in the Rails tutorial that talks about this kind of thing. What we're doing is inspecting the processes in our system. And in particular, we're looking at Spring, which is a server that runs when the tests are running. And what it does is it preloads a bunch of Rails configuration stuff. So basically, anything that can be preloaded is preloaded. And that's just to speed up the test suite. But sometimes they kind of hang out. These Spring processes last for a while. In principle, you can type Spring stop, but often that doesn't work. You can see it doesn't even think it's running. So in this case, we have to bring in the heavy artillery. We're going to do what's called a kill. We're going to kill these processes. This is the process ID right here. And we can kill them individually, but it's easier to kill them all at once with pkill. And we give it the message, the Unix message for killing, which is -9 for some reason. It just happens to be -9. And then we give it the file pattern Spring. This is pretty advanced stuff, but this is what happens sometimes. And now if we look at our processes and match the word Spring, there's just that command itself. So this is the command we just ran, this grep Spring. So that means we killed all those Spring processes, and it should be a lot faster. Okay, let's check out the master branch. And you can see actually this changed in here because this routes file is different on the master branch. And let's merge in the static pages. There we go. You can see the routes file changed back. And now we can push these changes up to Bitbucket. We just merged in that branch, and we can push up the changes. And of course, we can also deploy to Heroku. In this context, I feel like it's a really good idea always to run your tests before deploying. So in this case, bundle exec rake test. You can actually just type rake, which is an alias for rake test, and on the cloud.eu you also don't need bundle exec, at least not as of this moment. But I include it for completeness. All right, so you can see we're green, and we're ready to push up to the production server. Okay, the deploy is done. Let's see if it worked. And there we go. Look at that. Try that. Check out static pages about. And help. Great. So it's working on the production server too. Looking at this page, I just realized that we're missing a period at the end of the sentence, so let's fix that right now. Actually, I want to do this on the topic branch. And put it here. And actually, I do like to push this up, just so the topic branch matches the local branch. Go back to the master branch, merge in the topic branch, and then redeploy. Actually, let's push up to Bitbucket first. All right, let's see if that worked. Just refresh this. All right, there's the extra period that was missing. There's even one more thing I want to fix just to make sure that the screencasts are consistent with the book. There's an extra level of indentation here that I accidentally put in, so I'm going to do a Shift-Tab to put it back. And this will just give you a sense of how quickly you can do things. I'm on the static pages branch here. Let's say dedent some code, the opposite of indent. And now I know exactly what I want to do. So I'm just going to issue the commands chained together with a double ampersand, which will run all of the commands, but will stop running the commands if any of them fails. So I'm going to push it up, and check out master. So you can see all of these commands will execute at once, or sequentially. So we've seen, just from this example right here, that Rails is great at these kinds of static pages. In fact, it's so good that I prefer to use Rails even if it's just a static website. And the reason for that is because you never know when you might want to add just a little bit of dynamic content. The difficulty of going from purely static to just slightly dynamic is really high if you're using a static website, if you're not using a framework. But with Rails, you have all this power. And so, for example, you can change the title on a per-page basis the way we did in this lesson. In the next lesson, we'll start with this idea of the page title, and we'll factor that functionality into what's called a helper function. And in the process, we'll discover that we have quite a lot of limitations in our Ruby knowledge. So the next lesson will be somewhat of a diversion. We're going to talk about the basics of the Ruby programming language that underlies Rails, that Rails is written in. And then in lesson 5, we'll start up again with the main development of the sample application.